now we're happy to take any questions on these issues. Yes, sir.
BGNS, hi, sir. We know that this is a great deal for Mexico. However, there's two challenges that y'all need to face, which is migration and, of course, security, especially the Mexican side. How is it that you and, of course, state leaders, federal leaders are going to tackle this?
Well, border security is an issue that is incredibly important. I spend a lot of time on it, but I want to keep today focused on the topic of this event, which is the legislation that was just signed into law that is going to produce thousands of jobs and billions of dollars of commerce for the state of Texas and for South Texas in particular.
Can we get clarification on the shot clock that went into law today?
December 22nd is when the shot clock started. So that's when President Biden signed the legislation. So the shot clock started on December 22nd. You have 60 days from that point for the State Department to issue its recommendation to the White House. At the end of those 60 days, the second shot clock starts, and the president has 60 days to grant the permit. If the president doesn't act at the end of those 60 days, the permit is deemed automatically granted by operation of law, so that takes you to April 20th.
Doesn't want to.
The Biden border crisis is an absolute humanitarian disaster, and Democrats don't care. Last year, 853 migrants died crossing illegally into this country. Alejandro Mayorkas didn't even know how many had died because he didn't care. When I brought 19 senators down to the border, we saw a man who had drowned floating in the Rio Grande. Democrats don't care. Last year, thousands upon thousands of children were brutalized and sexually assaulted by human traffickers, and Democrats don't care. Last year, thousands of women were sexually assaulted by human traffickers, and Democrats do not give a damn. Last year, more than 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses from Chinese fentanyl flooding across the southern border, and Democrats do not give a damn. Now, you may say, oh, come on, that's harsh. They care. They care. Somewhere in their hearts, they care about all the people suffering and dying. Baloney. Because if they cared, they would stop it. If you cared about the children being raped at the border, you would say no more. When Joe Biden came in, we had the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. He inherited success, and he deliberately broke it. Democrats want these open borders. And this bill, this mysterious bill, that is buried down in the basement of Chuck Schumer's office. All of you have a living as reporters. Ask yourself, why have you not read the text of the bill? There's a reason. As bad as we think the bill is, I promise you it's worse. The people pushing this deal knew, no, if the American people knew what was in it, they would be against it. This supplemental bill is a kamikaze plane in a box canyon with no exit, headed for a train wreck. If you look at this bill, the bill is not designed to fix this problem. By the way, the single greatest national security threat to America, this right here. I think the odds of a major terrorist attack in the United States are higher today than they've been any time since September 11th. You know what? In that spike, how many Hamas terrorists are there? How many Hezbollah terrorists are there? And what are we going to say when they carry out an attack here like October 7th in Israel? This bill is not designed to fix the problem. This bill normalizes 5,000 people a day coming in. 5,000 people a day is over 1.8 million a year. That's called an invasion. By the way, under Joe Biden, we've had 9.6 million. So the great Republican compromise is we're for 2/3 of Joe Biden's open borders. We'll let in 6 million instead of 9 million. This makes utterly no sense. And there's a reason. Republican leadership is like Charlie Brown with Lucy and the football. And over again, they run for the football, and over again, Lucy Schumer pulls it away. And Republican leadership lands on their ass. They entered this negotiation saying, we will only do what Chuck Schumer will agree to. He doesn't want to fix this. He wants it to continue. So negotiating with Chuck Schumer on securing the border is like putting Hannibal Lecter in charge of a Go Vegan ad campaign. He might dine on your liver with a healthy side of fava beans, but it's not going to remotely do what the suggested objective is. Final point. Not only is this bill utterly ineffective in fixing the problem, but it's designed to fail. The chances of this bill passing the House of Representatives, I can quantify it mathematically. The chances of this bill passing the House are 0.000%. It ain't going to pass. At lunch, we had a vigorous discussion at lunch yesterday. I asked leadership, why on earth would you be teeing up a vote with every Democrat and 10 or 12 Republicans that has no chance of passing the House? It's not going to become law, and I get it. Leadership really, really, really wants Ukraine funding. But that doesn't happen unless you get a bill that can pass the House. The only purpose of taking this up is giving Democrats political cover to say, gosh, we would have secured the border, but those pesky House Republicans didn't let us. It's a good talking point. It's complete baloney, but it's a good talking point. This bill represents Senate Republican leadership waging war on House Republican leadership. It's not designed to secure the border, and it won't secure the border. And that's why leadership wants it kept in secret. They don't want anyone to see the text of it. Republicans in the Senate ought to have the sense and sanity to say, secure the border, or else we're not going to go along with providing fig leaves to cover up the deliberate failure of Joe Biden and the Democrats. They have caused this crisis.
We can answer anybody's questions. Yes.
I have one for Senator Cruz, actually. It's about Texas. So the Department of Homeland Security this week sent another letter again demanding access to Shelby Park. Texas is not evacuating, as you know, instead deploying even more razor wire. Do you think this will ultimately lead to a showdown between the federal border patrol agents and the National Guard in Texas?
Listen, I'm proud of the great state of Texas. I'm proud of our governor. I'm proud of our state legislature because they're stepping up and defending our state from invasion. Listen, the mayor of a bunch of blue cities, the governors of a bunch of blue states have declared illegal immigration emergencies in their states. That's true in New York, that's true in Boston, that's true in Massachusetts, that's true in Chicago, that's true in LA. Eric Adams, the liberal Democrat in New York, has said illegal immigration is destroying New York City. That's 110,000 people are destroying New York City. I agree with him. But if 110,000 people are destroying New York City, what the hell do you think 9.6 million people are doing to Texas and the other states on the southern border? And so Texas is stepping up to defend our state. I'm glad we are, but the reason Texas is doing so is because Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and the Democrats affirmatively want this invasion. By the way, you want to know why negotiating with these guys, why they're doing it in such bad faith? They are today, as you pointed out. Joe Biden is litigating against the state of Texas to try to stop Texas from securing the border. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. is the greatest friend the Mexican drug cartels have ever had. He is the greatest financial benefactor the Mexican drug cartels have ever had. He is the single largest human trafficker in history. Now, that may sound like hyperbole, but those 9.6 million people, when they come over and turn themselves in, they tell the Border Patrol agents, I want to go to the following city, and they pick a city. And Joe Biden puts them on planes and puts them on buses and sends them to every city in America, and Joe Biden is the last mile of the human trafficking network. So, yes, Biden is fighting ferociously to stop Texas from defending ourselves. He is wrong. But it shows that Biden wants this, and the only thing Biden wants next is to make Ron Johnson have to buy a bigger poster board because the chart goes higher. That's all he's looking for.
Can you explain, when you say Democrats want this, Biden wants this, they're doing this intentionally?
We can answer anybody's questions. Yes.
I have one for Senator Cruz, actually. It's about Texas. So the Department of Homeland Security this week sent another letter again demanding access to Shelby Park. Texas is not evacuating, as you know, instead deploying even more razor wire. Do you think this will ultimately lead to a showdown between the federal border patrol agents and the National Guard in Texas?
Listen, I'm proud of the great state of Texas. I'm proud of our governor. I'm proud of our state legislature because they're stepping up and defending our state from invasion. Listen, the mayor of a bunch of blue cities, the governors of a bunch of blue states have declared illegal immigration emergencies in their states. That's true in New York, that's true in Boston, that's true in Massachusetts, that's true in Chicago, that's true in LA. Eric Adams, the liberal Democrat in New York, has said illegal immigration is destroying New York City. That's 110,000 people are destroying New York City. I agree with him. But if 110,000 people are destroying New York City, what the hell do you think 9.6 million people are doing to Texas and the other states on the southern border? And so Texas is stepping up to defend our state. I'm glad we are, but the reason Texas is doing so is because Joe Biden and Chuck Schumer and the Democrats affirmatively want this invasion. By the way, you want to know why negotiating with these guys, why they're doing it in such bad faith? They are today, as you pointed out. Joe Biden is litigating against the state of Texas to try to stop Texas from securing the border. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. is the greatest friend the Mexican drug cartels have ever had. He is the greatest financial benefactor the Mexican drug cartels have ever had. He is the single largest human trafficker in history. Now, that may sound like hyperbole, but those 9.6 million people, when they come over and turn themselves in, they tell the Border Patrol agents, I want to go to the following city, and they pick a city. And Joe Biden puts them on planes and puts them on buses and sends them to every city in America, and Joe Biden is the last mile of the human trafficking network. So, yes, Biden is fighting ferociously to stop Texas from defending ourselves. He is wrong. But it shows that Biden wants this, and the only thing Biden wants next is to make Ron Johnson have to buy a bigger poster board because the chart goes higher. That's all he's looking for. Every once in a while, we have some good news. The good news is this bill is dead. Now, my views on this bill have not been ambiguous. At the last press conference we had here, I described it as, quote, a steaming pile of crap. Some people afterwards criticized that characterization. Can't imagine why. And they said, well, you haven't read the text, so how can you say that? And you're right. All I knew was what had been described by the bill sponsors. Well, now we've seen the text, and it turned out my assessment was far too kind. This bill is a terrible bill. I'm going to break it down on two metrics. Number one, policy, and number two, politics. On policy, why is this bill a terrible bill? Because it does not solve the problem. We have the worst rate of illegal immigration in our nation's history. People are dying. Children are being brutalized. Women are being sexually assaulted. Over 100,000 people died of overdoses last year. This bill doesn't fix it. Understand, this border crisis is deliberate. Joe Biden caused it. He caused it by his own unilateral decisions. 3 decisions caused this crisis, all made the first week of his presidency. He inherited the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years, and his first week as president, he halted construction on the border wall, he reinstated the disastrous policy of catch and release, and he pulled out of the unbelievably successful Remain in Mexico agreement. That caused this explosion. It also means Joe Biden could solve it tomorrow. How would he solve it tomorrow? By reversing those 3 decisions, and you would get, once again, a secure border. Joe Biden doesn't want to secure the border. Kamala Harris doesn't want to secure the border. Chuck Schumer doesn't want to secure the border. And this bill was designed not to secure the border. Instead, this bill codified Joe Biden's open borders. This bill codified catch and release. Catch and release is contrary to law. But if we'd have passed this bill, catch and release would be right there in the U.S. Code. This bill normalized 5,000 illegal immigrants a day. 5,000 illegal immigrants a day works out to roughly 1.8 million a year. We've seen 9.6 million illegal immigrants under Joe Biden. Apparently, the Republican position was going to be, we don't like your 9.6, but we're okay with 2/3 of that illegal immigration. That was ridiculous. This bill gave work permits to illegal immigrants. This bill gave government-funded lawyers to illegal immigrants. You know, one of the provisions that I personally find most noxious, this bill goes directly after the state of Texas. And it says all litigation about immigration, you can't sue in Texas anymore. You got to come to Washington, D.C., to one of the most liberal courts in the country. Texas, sorry, we're throwing you out of court in Texas. You got to come to D.C. As I observed on X last night, one sane Republican would side with Joe Biden over the state of Texas in this battle to secure the border. That's what this bill did. So as a policy matter, it was terrible policy. And as a matter of politics, it was even dumber. It was obvious from day one this bill would never pass into law. Speaker of the House said it was dead on arrival. House leadership all said it has zero chance of passage. So if it wasn't going to pass into law, if you knew that, and we did know that, what was the purpose of it? The entire purpose of this bill is to give political camouflage for Democrats running in November. The objective of this bill was, number one, to do nothing, so to do zero to secure the border, but to let every Democrat running for office say, gosh, I wanted to secure the border, but those mean Republicans wouldn't let us. This is all about talking points to deceive the voters. We're already seeing Democrat candidates across the country repeating that. I was ready to secure the border, but the Republicans didn't. It's an utter lie. Remember again, Joe Biden can secure the border any day he wants. He doesn't want to. And by the way, we could have passed legislation that every one of us would have supported. H.R. 2 that passed the House of Representatives. I've introduced H.R. 2 in the Senate. Chuck Schumer wants a bill that I'll vote for Ukraine aid on it. Give me Ukraine aid and H.R. 2 and I'll vote for that. Because that actually would secure the border. And what did Chuck Schumer say at the outset? Nope. H.R. 2 is off the table. Why? Because the Democrats do not want to secure the border. They want this invasion, and the Americans who are dying as a result, they're willing to look the other way. Mr. President, I rise today on a motion to commit to instruct that H.R. 2 be added to this continuing resolution. H.R. 2 contains a comprehensive plan to secure the border, to stop catch and release, to build the wall, to stop visa overstays, and to reform abuse of immigration, parole, and asylum laws. In the past couple of weeks, we have seen tragedy across this country, including a 22-year-old woman murdered in the state of Georgia, including a 2-year-old child murdered in the state of Virginia, including a 14-year-old child raped in Boston, Massachusetts, including a child under 14 raped in Louisiana, all by illegal aliens released by the Biden administration. It is time for this to end. This bill has passed the House, and if the Senate wants to secure our open borders, we can do so right now today. I urge an affirmative vote.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking. We face a partial shutdown of the government tomorrow night. We cannot let the threat of that government shutdown be used as leverage to set aside the bipartisan agreement on the CR before us in order to jam through deeply partisan immigration policies. We're not going to throw in the towel on our very carefully negotiated funding bills we have worked on in favor of a full-year CR that would impose devastating across-the-board cuts to defense and non-defense programs. Vote no.
Thank you, and I thank my colleagues for holding this press conference. Laken Riley should still be alive. The reason that she is not alive is because of Joe Biden's open borders and because of the Democrats' policies refusing to secure our border. There is a simple but-for causation. The murderer took the life of that 22-year-old beautiful young woman, a nursing student in Georgia out jogging. We had him in custody. He was apprehended in El Paso, crossing illegally from Venezuela. Had Joe Biden simply followed the law, what would have happened is that murderer would have been put on a plane, flown back to Venezuela, and Laken Riley would still be alive. But the Biden administration decided their political agenda was more important than protecting the lives of American citizens, and so they let the murderer go. But that wasn't the last stop of the failures that unfolded. The murderer went from El Paso to New York City, where he was arrested once again, this time for endangering the safety of a child. Once again, Laken Riley's life could have been saved, but New York City, unfortunately, is a sanctuary city where Democrats refused to enforce the law, so they let the murderer go. Had New York City put him in jail, that murderer would not have been in Georgia to beat Laken Riley to death. But New York City let him go once again. This revolving door happens over and over again, and I have to say just how indefensible the Biden administration's policies on the border are was laid bare during the State of the Union, where in his prepared remarks, President Biden did not plan to say a word about Laken Riley. And then in response to heckling, he did address her. He got her name wrong. And here was Joe Biden's defense. He said she was killed by a, quote, illegal. And he said, well, legals kill people too. I want you to understand what the President of the United States is saying. Because there are murderers in America, it's perfectly okay for him to continue releasing more murderers into America. That is asinine. That makes utterly no sense. And by the way, the insult was compounded where the next day, what did Joe Biden do? He didn't apologize to Laken Riley's parents. He didn't take responsibility that his policies released the murderer that took their daughter's life. He didn't do any of that. Instead, he apologized for using the word illegals. Because to this White House, it's more important to genuflect before the American Politburo of language than it is to actually protect American citizens. Listen, the Laken Riley Act is simple common sense legislation. It passed the House with a large bipartisan majority. The Senate ought to take it up and pass it as well, although I have to say, I have complete confidence that Chuck Schumer and the Senate Democrats have no interest in doing so. Because the sad priority of this White House and of the Senate Democrats is they put illegal aliens and criminals consistently higher on the priority list than protecting the lives of American citizens. And over again, we see more and more Americans losing their lives as a result. We are witnessing a profound threat to our nation at the southern border. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and this entire administration has deliberately and willfully facilitated the criminal invasion of this country. It is a humanitarian crisis. It is a public safety crisis. It is a national security crisis. When Alejandro Mayorkas last testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee, I asked him how many migrants died last year crossing into this country. He said, I don't know. Of course he didn't. The number's 853, but this administration doesn't care about the body bags that their open borders are producing. When Joe Biden stood before Congress and gave the State of the Union address, he had planned in his remarks not to say a word about Laken Riley, the beautiful 22-year-old woman, the nursing student in Georgia, murdered by an illegal alien Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas released into this country. When Biden gave his State of the Union address, he didn't mention the name Jeremy Caceres, the 2-year-old little boy murdered just miles away from here in Prince George's County, again by an illegal alien, that Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas released into this country. He also didn't mention the Haitian illegal immigrant that Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas flew from Haiti to America, released, who then violently raped a 15-year-old girl in Boston, Massachusetts, who was severely disabled. What we are witnessing is evil. It is wrong. That is why the House of Representatives impeached Alejandro Mayorkas, because he has aided and abetted the criminal invasion of this United States. And yet, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats don't want to talk about it.
Wow, got so quiet.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. Great honor. I just saw a poll that we're actually leading with Hispanics. That's never happened before. I don't know, but it's going to be close. I mean, she's sleeping right now. She couldn't go on the trail. You know, you think when you have 14 days left, you wouldn't be sleeping. She's not doing anything today. I should take one of that. We've gone 52 days in a row, and I'm going 14 more days, and we're going to have a big victory party, hopefully, and we're going to turn our country around. We're going to make it great again, as I say. We're going to make America great again, but we are joined by a lot of fantastic people, a lot of great political people, and it really is an honor to have you at Doral, especially. This has been a very special place for me. It's been a great success. I want to thank all of the representatives from the Doral area, because the mayor and everybody. Where's Christy? Is she around? Let's see. Right here. Christy. Oh, Christy. Christy. Oh, my Christy. Boy, oh, boy. Hi, Christy. Hi, sweetie. You've been so great. We've been so great, and we worked together for a long time, right? Although she's so young, it's not that long. It can't be that long, but it is. 13 years? Wow.
Since you bought the resort?
That's pretty good, yeah, since I bought it. And you've been great. Thank you very much for everything. And we're going to just say a few words. We're going to talk about what's happening with the election. We'll take some questions from the fake news. And we will get on with it. We have a great panel today, and I appreciate it. We have some real religious leaders. They're the most powerful ones on the panel by far, right? Right, Chrissy? They're the most powerful. And look at that gentleman. That's the biggest church I've ever seen in my life, right? When we need overflow, we use your church, and we get great people in that church, and you are fantastic. So I want to thank all of the people that have been supporting us for so long and so strongly. We're doing very well. The polls are looking great, and I think maybe more important than even the polls are the initial numbers are looking incredible. You know, in North Carolina, I was there, did 3 stops there actually yesterday, and one quite a way right after this horrible event happened. But in North Carolina, we have just an amazing result going on, because we were expected to maybe have 50% of the vote or 30%. Nobody knew what was going to happen. The place was, I mean, the people were wiped out. And in some of the worst hit sections, they had more people voting than they had in 2016 or in 2020. Can you believe it? Wow. Nobody expected that. They thought if we got 50%, I mean, you have to see the homes were just absolutely leveled, floated away, many of them. And there was death. There was death. And FEMA's responded not well. The White House has done a very poor job. They should be ashamed of themselves, actually. But the people kicked in. Franklin Graham's been fantastic, and we've raised a lot of money. We've raised a lot of money for the area, a lot of money, over $8 million and we've given out to various people that we know do a good job. I met some people there yesterday that were incredible. A couple of them said the nicest things. I think the nicest, the most beautiful things I've ever had said about me. I thought I heard everything. I've heard everything, good and bad. And they said the most beautiful things. So, so I just want to thank them. The words were so beautiful. So, Doral Mayor Christy Fraga, and thank you very much. And Miami Mayor Francis Suarez, wherever Francis is, and I just saw him on television. He was on Fox, and he was saying the best things about me. And thank you for everything and the endorsement and all. Thanks a lot, Francis. You're doing a great job, too, both of you. Everybody should have mayors like this. We see some mayors. We see a lot of mayors that aren't quite as good, I will tell you, and some that aren't good at all. The mayor of Hialeah, Esteban Bobo. And you know why I love you is because he named their main street after Trump. Going right into Hialeah, going into the track, it's Trump. So many people call me. They say, thank you, Mayor. They say, I just saw the most beautiful street. It's got your name on it. And that's sort of one of the first And I really appreciate it, Mayor. You've been great. Members of Congress, Maria, Elvira, Salazar, thank you. Thank you, Maria, very much. And a friend of mine for a long time, Carlos Jimenez. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. Where is he? And you were also great today, Carlos. I watched you. You got up and you let him have it. You said how bad she is, how good I am. And I said, that's my Carlos. And she is bad. Look, we don't need bad people. We had 4 years of bad, and we're not going to have 4 more years. The country can't survive it. It is amazing. Think of it. I said, where is she campaigning today? Sir, she's got a day off. You got 14 days left for the presidency, and she's taking a day off. This is not what you want. This is not what you want. Matt, say hello, Matt. My friend for a long time, huh? A man who has been incredible. He owns Goya Foods. I eat it whenever I can. So Bob, and everyone knows him, but I think you're probably the most well-known. You know, they attacked Bob. He announced that he's in favor of Trump. And, you know, the radical left lunatics went crazy. They just went crazy. And they do things that probably are illegal, probably. I think it's actually illegal. They'll go after companies. They'll go after viciously. They'll never go after your oil company. But they'll go after, you wouldn't stand for it either. But Bob did something that was amazing. He said, you know, some people fold because they're weak. And they make a mistake in folding. Because once you fold, then they go after you again and again. But Bob did it different with Goya. He was very proud of it, and he went out there and he said, that's right, we love Trump, we love everything that they like our policies, number one. He likes our policies, then he got to like me. But he went, and everybody thought, oh, this would be bad for his business. And his business doubled and then tripled, and then, right? I made him a lot of money because we have tremendous support. And you've been just a great friend for a long time now, right? For a long time. He took some heat at the beginning, but he handled it really incredibly. And whenever I see your food as opposed to some, I eat it. It's actually quite good out of the can. We do actually travel with cans. You know, people don't know that. We do travel with cans. Anyway, I want to thank you very much. Mario Rodriguez. Mario. Thank you. Thank you. Oh. Thank you, Mario. Do you want to say something, Mario? Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, Mr. President, it's amazing what you've done for the Hispanic community, and you are going to be rewarded handsomely for that.
Thank you. Well, we have, and they've rewarded me already. You know, it actually, this love affair has been going on pretty much from the beginning. Now, 2016, it was a little early, but then I started producing for them, and they produce for the country because the level of genius, entrepreneurship, energy that they have, it's an incredible community. And I liked them and they liked me. And now they're seeing numbers that are shocking. They're seeing numbers. I saw it this morning. The anchor was almost crying. They said, what's going on over here? It's been a great relationship. Thanks a lot, Mario. Mercedes Schlapp, thank you, Mercedes, very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mercedes. And a man who's really, he's got it, Pastor Ramiro Peña. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Pastor. Eduardo, thank you very much for being here. Big movie star from Mexico. He's done a great movie. We watched it together, Freedom, and really great. And you're doing another one very soon, I think, on a similar subject. Right? That's a very sad subject, but that really did create awareness for a very tough situation, so we appreciate it very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. Rick Scott's around someplace. Where's Rick? Hello, Rick. Hi, Rick. I just saw a poll. I saw two things. I saw a very nasty commercial about you, and it was false. I was going to call you, and I said, maybe he's going to be there. Nasty but false commercial. Such a lie. But don't worry, I have a lot of them about me. And it hasn't affected us. But Rick is fantastic. He was a great governor, and he's a great senator. He's a great senator. And the good news is I saw a poll, and you're really doing great. So you're doing really fantastic, Rick. But just keep it going. So this election is a choice between whether we will have 4 more years of total failure, because what's going on now, we are a nation in decline. We're a failing nation. We're laughed at all over the world. No matter where you go, they laugh at us. They can't even believe what's happening. And I'll tell you what, she's worse than he is. And they do lie. I was just saying to Rick, you know, the lies. They say the exact, I'll have like 10 different things where I'm this, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. Everybody knows it. The media knows it. They do nothing to change it. And then they come out with a commercial saying exactly the opposite. I mean, things like, I'm in favor of, or let's say they even say it differently, I'm against fracking. That's the first time I've ever heard it. Trump is against fracking. They do things that is just, and she's against fracking, but now she says she's for it. So I've had Hillary, I've had Sleepy Joe, I've had a lot of people that I've run against now. And, you know, on a different scale, I work with senators and trying to get them elected. We're doing very well, the Republicans. I think we could end up, I don't want to use numbers, but we could end up surprisingly good, right, Rick? It could be a number that people would be shocked at if you would have said it even 2 months ago. And I'm helping all of them, every one of them. And we had some great results. We've had some results that are really surprising. But this is the one, this woman is the worst, the lying. It's just unbelievable. Like the IVF, the fertilization. I came out totally in favor of it right from the beginning. She said, I'm against it. Carlos, she goes, he's totally against it. Every single item that having to do with energy, having to do with everything. And then she's got the worst governor in the country, probably the worst. I think she made a horrible mistake. We'll see what happens on November 5th, you know, let's see what happens. But there's something wrong with him, honestly. There's something wrong. And there's something wrong with her, too. She's slow, low IQ, something. I don't know what the hell it is, but they lie. We don't need another low IQ person. We had one for 4 years. We don't need another one. But, I mean, Crooked Hillary lied, but she didn't do it like this. I mean, she wouldn't take things that were so obvious and just say the opposite. They say the exact opposite. And as you know, there are 15 different elements of policy that she changed. She was in favor of sex changes for prisoners at their will, paid for by the government. And now she says, no, I don't think that would be a good idea. She was totally, I mean, when you talk about fracking, she said no fracking under, I mean, we have 25 commercials. Sometimes we put them on simultaneously. She's just, and now all of a sudden, I love fracking. I think it's wonderful. Although today, though, it came out, they had a bad thing come out today. One of her people said she's essentially against fracking. And it's very interesting when that came out. It was sort of a big story. One of her top people said that because that's where they are, Rick. That's where they are. They're against fracking. They're never going to, and they're against anything having to do with what's under the ground. And that's what, you know, Germany just went through it. They almost destroyed themselves. They went into a situation where they were putting windmills all over the place, and the wind wasn't blowing so much. And if they kept that process going, Germany would right now be bust. That's I guess one of the primary reasons that Angela is not there anymore. They tried it. They had solar. They had solar fields that's so big. I mean, I saw a solar field come, and I'm in favor of solar, but it's not the same thing. It's got to fire up these massive plants. It's not going to. But I saw a solar field the other day that looked like it took up half the desert. I'd never saw anything like it. It's all steel and glass and wires, and it looks like hell. And you see rabbits, they get caught in it, and you know, for the environmentalists, it's just terrible. I like, you know, some applications where you have it on a roof or you have it on something, but I'm looking at solar fields that are like miles and miles of just, and what it does to your desert areas or the areas that you're putting, it's just crazy. We have stuff right under the ground. Natural gas, we have things that, we had the cleanest air that we've ever had during my administration, and yet we also had more jobs, more productivity. We had the best numbers we've ever had. We had the lowest taxes we paid in life. So So we're in a race, and we're in a race with some very sick people. They're liars. They just lie. They lie about everything. And I was going to hit her really hard on the trail today, but now I don't have to because she's off. She's off. No, I can't get over it. Who the hell takes off? You have 14 days left. And she'll take a couple of more days off, too. You know why? She's lazy as hell, and she's got that reputation. She's a radical left lunatic. She's further left than Bernie Sanders or Pocahontas. Now, Pocahontas, because I think, is Pocahontas further left than Bernie? Just about, right? It's close. It's close. Who the hell cares, right? Rick says, I don't know. But they're out there. But she's furthest left. We can't have a person. She's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor. By the way, the fake news, look at all of them. Where is the father we should interview? Because I'd find it interesting to see what he has to say. He's, I don't know, they seem to have a problem, but it would be nice to interview the father. He's a Marxist professor. And I think that's okay. That's good, fine. But I think it's appropriate that the father be interviewed by the fake news. They don't want to interview him, and I wonder why. If we had a real press in this country, this wouldn't even be a race. And I'm not sure it is a race anyway. They just came out with the Atlanta Constitution, just came out with a poll that we're 5 up in Georgia. We're up in, and let's see what happens, because it all doesn't matter, because, you know, bad things happen. Some very, very bad things happened last time. And, but this time we don't have COVID, and it's going to be a lot harder for them to do bad things. So we're going to see. We have tremendous people. We have a lot of lawyers working. We have lawyers working, numbers of lawyers that nobody's ever seen before, because we're not going to play games, because we're going to lose our country. Our country's failing. We don't know what we're doing. We're laughed at all over the world. President Xi thinks we're stupid. Putin thinks we're stupid. That would have never happened. Putin, if I were president, Putin would have never, ever gone into Ukraine. Now we have a number of dead people that's so much greater than what they say. They knocked down an apartment house that's 2 blocks long. They're big buildings in Ukraine, 2 blocks long and 20 stories high, and they say one person was slightly injured. No, many people were killed when they did that. And these towns and cities all over Ukraine are knocked down. Millions of people. I mean, when you look at the total number of dead from that war, and it would have never happened, should have never happened, there was 0 chance. His energy policy also helped it happen, because he drove energy through the roof, because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And if you look at now, Israel, October 7th, that would have never happened. But if Bibi Netanyahu followed the plan of Biden, he didn't want him to do anything. And a bad thing happened today, you probably heard. Now, the press isn't covering it very much, which is just incredible. Possibly our Defense Department or somebody. Anyway, it was leaked, the entire military plan of Israel. The military plan, the plans they have at the highest level, it was leaked. Highly confidential information. It was leaked by our somebody. They have no idea who did it. Can you imagine you're fighting a war and you have your Americans, Carlos, can you imagine anything like that? Did you hear this? You know, they leaked all the information about the way that Israel's going to fight and how they're going to fight and where they're going to go. And somebody, who did that? Can you imagine somebody doing that? That's the enemy. I guess that maybe is the enemy from within, as I talk about. We have an enemy from within. They hate to talk about it. But could you imagine? Could you imagine? So we just can't stand for this incompetence anymore. We are an incompetently run country. We are led by a man that, first of all, look, I'm not a fan of his, but what they did to him was incredible. He had 14 million votes. He won the primary fair and square. He had 14 million votes, and they came to him. They said he had a bad debate. He didn't do well, and his numbers went down, but I think he would do, probably in the end, he might do better than her, because she's more incompetent than he is. I think she's grossly incompetent. And I don't want to be nice about it, because we can't take a chance. Nobody knows who she is. You say Harris. Her name is Harris. Who the hell is Harris? Nobody, even political people don't know. Rick Scott has no idea who the hell Harris is. No, people don't know who Harris is. But now they're finding out that she's a radical left lunatic, and we can't take a chance on losing this election, because if we lose this election, we may not have a country anymore. We may not, and I've heard this from a lot of very smart people that are very straight down the middle. They say, we may never have an election again in this country. This is where we're going. I used to say that if we don't do something, we all know what's happened with Venezuela. This was 20 years ago, one of the great countries of the world, and now it's troubled, to put it mildly. And I said would be Venezuela on steroids, meaning a bigger version. That can happen. Who would think it can happen? But I see it because I see the people that we deal with. And these people they don't love our country. They don't love our country. And we're going to do something about it, but we have to win the election. So, when they get up and they lie about every single thing, they tell you, they know your position. And in my case, it's been my position for many years. One of the people said the other night on television, he's a great guy, Jesse Waters, he said, whether you like Trump or not, his position's been the same for 30 years. I mean, it's been the same. I want strong borders. I don't want foreign countries to rip us off, Max. We're being ripped off by everybody, and our friends do it worse than our enemies. It's incredible. We had that very well going, and we did a good job on that, but we're going to do the ultimate job. We're going to bring a lot of those jobs back. I think we're going to bring more than we lost back, and it's going to happen very fast through intelligent taxation, tariffs, and incentives, and you're going to have companies pouring into our country, and they're going to be very happy. I think that's why I'm doing so well in Michigan. That's why the auto workers like Trump so much. Their union head is a stiff. He's a total stiff. He has no clue. He has no clue. He wants to go all electric. And all electric cars, they want to have all electric cars. And they're wonderful. I think they're great. They have an application, but we want gasoline-propelled cars. We want hybrids. We don't want hydrogen, Max, because they blow up and you are no longer recognizable, Max. This guy owns more gas stations than any guy. He owns so many gas stations, he doesn't know what to do with them, right? But and he's a great American too, by the way. He's started with nothing, and he's a very successful man. And he's a great man. So I just want to thank you all. We can't play games with these people. These are people that are dangerous people. And again, Hillary and Biden. Now, Biden didn't tell the truth very much, but he was much better than this one. This one is just an outright, I've never seen anything like it. Point after point after point, and then they do ads and they just say this stuff. And I just wonder, I hope the public is understanding it. I hope, because I found the public to be amazingly smart. They get it. I found it to be amazing that they get it. But the level of lying is just incredible. I mean, to a point where I can't even imagine it's legal. I was asking some of these lawyers, some of the top guys, I said, can they absolutely, 2 weeks before an election, go out and do an ad where every one of your policies are the exact opposite? Isn't that election interference, and isn't that fraud? And isn't there a court that can do something about that? But the end result is, we can talk about it here and people can listen and they understand it. I think they understand it. So maybe what we'll do is we'll go around, take a couple of questions, and have a little fun, okay? It's an honor to be with everybody, and especially this great Hispanic community. Okay? Thank you very much.
Mr. President, you know that the Latino community loves you, and it was such an honor. It was such an honor to work for you at the White House all 4 years, and I got a front row seat of how much you cared about the Latino community, and you delivered results, and you didn't pander to us. You gave us opportunity, and that's what we want. We want the American dream. My mother was born in Mexico, my dad was born in Brooklyn with very humble means, and they worked very hard and achieved the American dream. So that's how what other country could a little girl from East LA make it to the White House to work for President Trump? And thank you. and that dream is achievable through jobs. And we care, like all Americans, about the #1 issue, and that's jobs and the economy. And we have some amazing business owners here, sir, that want to tell you about how it was under your administration and what the trouble they're having. And so we have Joel Garza, who's here, who owns many Sonic franchises, among many other things. He's an entrepreneur. And so, Joel, why don't you tell the president and everybody here about what you're experiencing?
Thank you, Mr. President,
Thank you.
to have us here and taking the time to be with us today. It's been the last 3.5 years, the worst years for businesses. Inflation, interest rates with banks, prices, everything, is nothing compared to 2017 to 20, right, when you were, at the White House. And my biggest issue is going to be, it's easy to destroy what you build, but I don't think it's enough time for you in 4 years to rebuild again what these people destroy. I live in the city of Houston. In the last 2 years, 30% increase in property taxes. And we got a great governor. Governor Abbott, he's a great guy.
It's true.
Great guy, but we need your help as soon as possible. We need you help us with banks to stop regulations. It's just so difficult right now to create more jobs.
I think we're going to get it going very quickly, actually. I think it's a lot of time, and we have some very good foundation. We have, as an example, the tax bill that we passed. We gave you the biggest cut in taxes in the history of the country, bigger than the Reagan cuts. And all of that stuff, it's going to be very hard for them to give it up. I can't imagine politically that it would be possible. It would be a disaster for the country if that could lead to a depression, frankly, if they gave that up. But we have a great foundation to build on, and we're going to have things. So we're going to have a lot of companies coming in very fast. And I know your area does have some problems, incredibly. People don't talk about that, but they do. But most areas have problems because the policies of this administration, they don't even have a policy. They're like, they don't have a policy. There's nothing. They don't have anything. They don't know what they're doing. I mean, think of it. They want to go to all electric cars, the whole thing electric. They need $9 trillion, I read the other day, to do a charging station, Max. He owns the gasoline stuff. And to do a charging station, and they built 8 charging stations up in the Midwest someplace. They spent $9 billion. I kid you not. You know what that is? A charging station is like a gas pump. It's the equivalent of a gas pump. They spent $9 billion for 8 charging stations. So if you look at it that way, if you did the whole country, you would have spent $30 trillion, okay? Which is more than the country, which is every country in the world. It's so out of control. It's so horrible. And they don't want to change. The truckers came in to see me. The truckers are great. They have trucks that can go from New York to Los Angeles on a tank of diesel fuel. And they came in almost crying. They said, these people are crazy. They want us to go to electric trucks. And the problem is they don't go far. They'd have to stop 6 times. I mean, you talk about no deliveries. They have to stop 6 times. They're 2.5 times heavier than gasoline or diesel. So the truck would weigh 2.5. I said, well, that could be a problem, right? Yes, you'd have to rebuild every bridge in the United States because they can't hear. What do you think of that, Carlos? So now if you're a child, you'd say, okay, that doesn't work. You know, those 2 things, right? It doesn't go far. And the other thing, third thing, is they'd have to use half of the capacity for the battery because the battery takes up tremendous amounts of room, much more than a load of diesel fuel, which is, something. And by the way, even little things, I'll give you little boring facts. As the truck goes, the fuel gets lighter, the battery stays the same weight. So it's massively heavy, and it takes up about 50% of the area that you're supposed to use to transport it. So it doesn't work. So normally what you do is say, all right, after about, would you say 3 minutes, Carlos? 3 minutes, you'd say, okay, let's get on to the next. That doesn't work. They say, we don't care. We want you to do it. And these truckers are beside themselves. They're going to be forced to do electric trucks. They're not going to work. Maybe someday in the future, I don't know, maybe someday, but it's possible it'll never work because it's so crazy. But think of it, just the weight or the distance, they don't go far. The cost is astronomical. And these guys are going to be all put out of business. You're not going to have any truckers. And they say, we don't care. Build it. That's what we want. We want all electric trucks soon. Like, you give them such a short period of time. These are big. One gentleman had 29,000 trucks. And he said to me, you know, I've been buying trucks for 50 years, and every damn year they got better and bigger and stronger and more efficient. Every single year. And then we build the cabs, and we build apartments on the back of those trucks. And I'll tell you, sir, I know you like luxury. You'd be proud to live in one of those trucks. See, I don't know about that. I might be. Who knows? Who knows? And I think he meant it, actually. But he said, you'd be proud, you know, in the cab they build like the place for them to sleep and stay. He said, some of those things are so beautiful. But he said, every year, for 50 years, it got better. And if we had to go to electric, we would go back more than 50. We'd go back to 60 years. It would be worse than the truck from 50 years ago. Doesn't work. So what you say is it doesn't work. But they want to force it down your throat. Look at the case of Los Angeles and California. They have brownouts and blackouts all the time, and they want to go all electric. They don't have enough electric for themselves. They want to go all electric with one of the worst governors. And by the way, she, as the Attorney General, helped destroy the state of California, and she destroyed probably, that's Harris. She destroyed probably the best, maybe the best city in the world. I mean, San Francisco was one of the greatest cities. A friend of mine, Bob Tisch, used to say that's the best city that he's ever been. He was in many cities, the great Bob Tisch. And he said San Francisco was the best city in the United States. And now it's horrible. You know, I own property there, and it's very costly every time I do this. But I don't care, because this is a much higher calling. I hurt the value of my property tremendously when I say this, but it's almost unlivable now with the crime and all of the things that are happening. And the only thing I would disagree with you on is that the economy is very important. I actually think that the biggest thing is the border, because the border is destroying our country. It's really destroying. I think the economy is bad. But I think and it's made really bad by the horrible inflation that was caused. The inflation is really the biggest problem. But I really believe that even the inflation, and that's a country destroyer, it's a country buster, they call it, inflation. But I really think that the biggest problem this country has is what they've allowed to happen to us on the border. Right. They've allowed our country to be destroyed. They're allowing thousands of murderers and drug dealers and terrorists and people from mental institutions. They're emptying out their jails into our country. They're emptying out their jails. And by the way, their crime rates all over the world are going down. They have many people now coming from the Congo in Africa. It's not just, you think about South America, they're emptying out their jails in the Congo. And they're delivering them to the border, and they're saying, congratulations, here's America. And we have 21 million people at least over the last little while. And if they got in, they're going to have open borders 100%, just like they tried to trick everybody. They said they tried to tighten it up a little bit just to make, because they have an election coming up. It didn't work much, but they forgot to tell you that they continue to fly big, beautiful Boeing jets right over the border with hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants landing in the Midwest and other places. They forgot to stop those planes coming in. They thought they were going to put a little bit of a show on the border and they could show something. They didn't do it. I think it's the single biggest problem, because our country is loaded up right now with murderers and with people, and seriously ill people from mental institutions, and those mental institutions are empty, and those jails are becoming empty. And countries are down 60, 70, and 80% in crime. And we're going through the roof with crime. When she said, no, the migrants don't commit crime. These migrants are, the criminals that they're allowing in are tougher than any criminal there is. The only good thing about it is they make our criminals look like nice people. These are ruthless, horrible people. I'd like to ask Max to say a few words because he gets it from the standpoint of where he was born. He grew up in a system, and I've seen him speak very beautifully on this subject of what's happening to our country. Max?
Well, thank you, Mr. President, for being here. Last time you asked me to talk, I took everybody else's time and you told me to shut up, so I'm going to make it very brief.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to start by saying, drill, baby, drill, because that is your motto. I am extremely confident, without a doubt, that the first day that we elect Mr. Donald J. Trump, our next president, the first day in office, I guarantee you he'll solve half of the problems that we have. The most important.
Sure.
Most important. On November 5th, the election is not about you and us. It's about freedom and oppression. And this is the only man that I know that can handle that. This is the only man that has survived, for the grace of God, things that we can never imagine. And he gets up and he says, fight, fight, fight. I happen to be honored today. I am honored today by being surrounded by representatives of God on earth, and we have to pray. Yes. And I always would say, pray, 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 but fight, 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 because that's exactly what we need to do. Praying itself is not going to do it. We need to pray and fight. Now, talking about the economy, this is very simple. You made us energy independent in just a flick of a finger.
That's right.
You can do it again. Now here's the problem. We have people running our country who are totally economic illiterate. These people have never had a job. These people have never run a business. These people have never signed the front of a check. Mr. Donald Trump has done all of that, and he runs the country like a business, because after all, it's a business. You cannot keep printing money that you don't have to help people who hate you instead of taking care of your own neighbors here in America. That's why he will make America great again. And when he makes America great again, he will make the whole world great again. Because we need to be strong enough to take care of our problem, and then we can go and help the people who need help. So thank you, Mr. President. Talking about the American dream. A young boy came to this country at age 13, didn't even know the language. And one day, he's sitting in a panel, hugging the best man, the President of the United States of America. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, and it's a misnomer that Latinos want open borders. We want a secure border like all Americans. And we know what it leads to. Eduardo, who is the producer of Sound of Freedom, he has so much firsthand experience. So Eduardo, why don't you tell us about the movie and what we're facing with the immigration that the president's talking about?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, President, for your time. My name is Eduardo Verástegui, and I am very grateful to this nation for opening the door to my dreams. This nation has been such an amazing blessing in my life. God bless America. God bless Mexico, and God bless Hispanic America. And let's make America and Mexico and Hispanic America great again. Together, pro-life again, healthy again, and free again. I met these heroes 10 years ago in Los Angeles, California. Ex-Navy SEALs, ex-CIA agents, and they travel around the world undercover rescuing children. And when they told me in details what they do, in how they rescue these children, my eyes were open. And I said, I'm a filmmaker, I wanna make a movie about this, because the first step to eradicate child trafficking is to raise awareness. Because if you don't know that this problem exists, how you can fix it? So I made a promise to God that I will dedicate my entire life to end child trafficking. To end child trafficking. Because God's children are not for sale. Children are sacred. And I am very grateful with you, Mr. President, dear amigo, dear hermano, because of you hosting a private screening in your house, because of you endorsing Sound of Freedom. After that, Sound of Freedom became the #1 independent film in box office ever in history, produced by a Mexican producer. Thank you for that. Thank you for the incredible hard work you're doing. Thank you for putting the children first. And that's why it's so important, is for all the media, for all Mexican Americans, Hispanic Americans, to vote for President Trump. And I know we will win for the third time. For the third time. Yes. Yes. We will win for the third time. And that's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's a fact. Because it's true. Because it's true. Look what is happening right now. Look what is happening right now with these evil people. Obama, Hillary, Kamala, Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, all this team. There's more than 300,000 children, over 300,000 children that they came through the border, they released them, and we don't know where they are. Kamala, where are the children? Kamala, where are the children? You know, these people, Kamala and Biden, they're the biggest human traffickers in the history. And everyone knows that. And that's why I'm here to give my 100% to support my dear friend, President Donald Trump. And again, we will win for the third time. God bless you. God bless you, Mr. President.
Really nice. Thank you.
We need to put you in the White House back again, in the beautiful White House. You're going to be in the beautiful White House again.
You bring up something that people don't talk about, the press doesn't talk about. I think if it were on the other side, it would be one of the great scandals in history. It's actually 325,000 children are missing, sex slaves, slaves, or dead.
Yes.
One of those four things: slaves, sex slaves, missing or dead. And think of what 325,000, you know, we say it, it's a number, blah, blah, blah. I was talking to a reporter before, I said, 325,000. Oh, what else is new? He's going like, let's go to the next question. I'm saying to myself, can you believe it? Wow. A bad sort of a reporter, I told him he is. But think of it almost like, you know, like, let's get on with the interview. Think of what 325,000, we have religious leaders up here. Think of what 325,000. How many times can you fill a nice big stadium like a Yankee Stadium with that 325,000? They're missing. I think many of them are dead. Most of them possibly are dead. It's so sad. Our country is so sad. And then you wake up to the news that we've given the entire Israeli game plan to the enemy. Who could imagine this? Who could imagine this? I would say Israel's not too happy about that, right? But with all of this together, add it up, and I'm just so glad I bring it up, and it doesn't register. Maybe it registered better the way you said it, because, you know, you're such passion, the way you said that. We are missing, during their regime, this stupid person that was the border czar. She was made the border czar. Now she said she wasn't. She was the border czar for 3.5 years, and now she said no. Whether she is or not, she was in charge of the border. That's loud and clear. She never once called the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol, by the way, 5 days ago endorsed me, which is something they're not even really supposed to do. And in endorsing me, they gave it a full-throated endorsement. But and endorsed me, they said how horrible she is. And it's not easy for them to say that. You know, this is the vice president of the country. They work for the country. They said the worst that they've ever seen. And you know, they're great people. They're people that want to do their job. It's easier not to do the job, probably. Just let the people walk right into our country. They want to do the job. They love the country. They're incredible people. I've gotten to know them very well. And they said not one time, the question was asked by the fake news, how many times did she call? Not one call was ever made to any of them by either Biden or Kamala. Not one call about the border. And I actually think it's the biggest thing. You know, we talk about the economy and we talk about inflation. Let's put them together. But there's something about that border that's just really, really evil. The drugs, the human trafficking, you know, it's not just people pouring through. It's the human trafficking, and they traffic in women mostly. It's mostly women, believe it or not, as much as we talk about the 325,000, but women still have the big edge. They traffic in women and children, and they do it at levels that, by the way, 4 years ago, it's always bad. If you do one person, it's bad. But this is 15 or 16 times the number. Nobody checks. Nobody does anything. You know how you check? You go and open the trunk of a car. That's how they put them mostly in trunks of cars. How would you like to be a woman, a little girl, a little boy, in the trunk of a car? That's how they find them. A lot of times they're dead because of the heat. They drive through. By the time they get to the destination, they open the trunk and they're dead. And this horrible, incompetent person has allowed this to happen, and never one time called anybody from the Border Patrol. They work for her, and they work for him, and then they complain about a bill. It's a phony deal. It's a scam. There's no bill. I never had a bill. All you have to do as president, wake him up and say, Joe, we need you to say close the border. That's what I did.
That's right.
I just said we're closing the border. He keeps talking about, they keep bringing up a phony bill. The bill was horrible. 2 million people are allowed in. It was a horrible bill, stupid bill, but has nothing to do. As president, you have it's called extreme power. You have extreme power. You can, just by the fact you say, close the border, and the border's closed. That's it. Very, very simple. You don't need all of this nonsense that they talk about. But the truth is, for some reason, and I can't figure it out, for some reason they want open borders. Nobody's been able to tell me why. I don't think they can tell you why. They just want open borders. So we have to win the election. I'm so glad you brought up, you said 300, but the number's actually 325. I'll give you a number that's really bad too. So the Border Patrol, because they've had it, they've never done this before, they released a list of criminals in our country. And they really are tremendously good if you let them do the job like I let them do the job. We have 13,099, exactly, 13,000 during their term. They tried to say, oh, this is over 40 years. No, this is during their 3.5 year that they've been there. 13,099 murderers. These are murderers. These are people that were in prison, and they're murderers. Some are up for the death penalty, but some killed far more than one person. 13,099, it's the exact number. Every one of them has been released into the United States of America. Then you have the drug lords and the drug dealers. There are thousands of them. Then you have the traffickers, the human traffickers. These are people that largely were in jail, caught. Then you have the gang members. These are people that weren't in jail, but they ruled the cities. They ruled the cities, the gangs, they ruled them. You don't have them, Christian Durrell, for the most part. If you did, you'd do something about it very quickly. We're lucky. But these are gang members that are so violent. And you see it's happening in Aurora, in Colorado, where you have a governor who's a radical left governor who's petrified of the whole situation. And they have military-style weapons. They have weapons that are of military quality. Somebody said it might be a step up. It's called a Supreme, a military Supreme. They have weapons, and they're taking over apartment complexes and everything. These gangs come from Venezuela largely. What's happening to our country is it's so crazy. Nobody would think it. I mean, you sit here and you're just amazed. As you speak, you get angrier and angrier because it's so simple and it's so obvious, and everyone knows it's true, and nobody does anything about it. All they think about is transgender operations. All they think about is, we want men we want men to play in women's sports. You know, I've never met a person, because I'm a sports guy, I've never met a person that came up to me and they say, we want men to play in women's sports. Somehow they're pushing it. Has anyone here ever met? I've been doing this a long time, and I've been talking about this for a while, because I'm ending it on day one. I'm ending it on day one. And we, despite a whole web of things, we wouldn't accept it. But we're going to just end it. But has anyone ever had anyone, I mean, you have all these great politicians up here. Carlos, has anyone come up to you and say, we insist on having men play in women's sports? I saw a volleyball match this weekend where a man who transitioned, this is the way, I'm very politically correct now because, you know, you lose your whole, you lose in politics if you say slightly off. A man who transitioned into, congratulations, a woman, hit a ball. He was like 4 feet up in the air. He smashed a ball so hard that these young ladies that were all top players, they said, we've never seen anything. They hit her on the head. And, you know, people have been very badly hurt in that sport and in other sports. Swimming, the records, it's ridiculous. The records are being broken by numbers that nobody's even thought possible. The greatest is weightlifting. You see weightlifting records. Take a look at some of these records where a record that stood for 18 years and they'd put an eighth of an ounce and an eighth of an ounce and it stood, and you know, these guys are walking in and breaking it. It's so sick that you actually say they hate our country. But think, has anybody approached you and say, we want to really fight hard so that men can play in women's sports? I don't think so. So there's a sickness going on in our country. We have to end the sickness. And we have to start, because she's a radical left. You know, she was one of the leaders, the one I'm running against. You're all running against somebody, but the one I'm running against, she was in favor of defund the police. She was one of the starters of defund. Now, once you have that ideology, even for a week or a day, you shouldn't be president. Because if you want defund the police, even for a day, you shouldn't be president. And she was one of the leaders. So,
Mr. President?
So I just want to leave it at that. Would anybody else like to say anything? Bob, would you like to say something?
Sure, Mr. President.
Go ahead.
Give a Latino a microphone. We'll
That's all right, in your case.
Mr. President, I can't believe your courage, your fight, and I know why you're doing this. You're not doing it for anything but because you love this country, you love us, and we love you. And there's a big day coming up, November 5th. It's existential for this country. Yeah. And there's a day about 30 days later, 20-some days later, which is Thanksgiving. And I'm looking for the day where we can sit around the table and thank God that President Trump is the 47th President of the United States. We're going to bring this country back. There's a famous Cuban poet, Jose Marti, and he said, there are those who are born to love and build and others to hate and destroy. You're a builder, you're a uniter, you're courageous, you love, and you create. Years ago, Elian Gonzalez, his mother, Elizabeth, brought him to these shores at 6 years old. And, you know, for opportunity, for the land of opportunity, we've become the land of exploitation. They took him out. The family had fought to keep him in this country under pressure from Castro. They took him out. Our DOJ took him out, Janet Reno. You know, Mr. President, DOJ has not gotten much better since then, even under some Republican presidents. But, you know, to me, the three-letter agencies is the fourth branch of government. This warfare that's gone against you, and that's one of the ones that are taking this country away. But we had a day of protest. I was here, I was living in Florida at that time when Elian was taken. And they expected that Miami would burn, like other protests around the country by other groups. but nothing happened. And why is that? Because the Cuban community, the Colombian community, the Venezuelan community have built Miami, and they built this country where the working class. And when you build, you don't destroy. Right. The other side of, loving and building and creating is hating and destroying and dividing. And that's what's happened. We have become from the land of opportunity to the land of exploitation. And the exploiter in chief is Kamala Harris and this administration. Yes. Right. And I don't say that I say that as a Latino who's fed up. Basta ya con el abuso. Where enough abuse and enough exploitation. To talk about, because I was involved with Eduardo on The Sound of Freedom as executive producer, and we stole it out of Disney, who had no faith in it. They were going to engavetarlo, they were going to put it away. But Angels lifted it up, and it became an incredible thing. And it lit a fire in me and our company to the awareness of child trafficking. Now, last year, and I know this because we were involved in anti-trafficking. On April 26, 2023, Tara Lee Rodas testified before Congress that the U.S. is the middleman in this trafficking. And I've been to Central America. Our kids are being bought for pennies on the dollar, and they're sold. We know where they are. None of these sponsors that they're handed off to have been vetted. They know that they're being sold into slavery, into sex, into body parts, etc. And so we are the middleman. We're profiting off of this. And, Mr. President, when you become president, we need to follow this money because it's dark money. We're exploiting our children. But something happened after Tara Lee Rodas, just last year, testified there were 85,000 children missing. And Javier Becerra, who's head of HHS, and Alejandro Mayorkas, he went to his group and said, people, Henry Ford would be embarrassed by the lack of efficiency of bringing people in as commodities to be sold. We need to be more efficient. And guess what happened? The Inspector General of DHS, Department of Homeland Security, under Mayorkas, they did this investigation that this year, less than a year later, were 325,000 children missing. And like the President said, also millions of people trafficked and exploited. 70% are women, 25% are children. But we were so good. That's the only thing we've been good at. To tell you, this administration, the only thing they've been good at is growing the biggest industry in the world, which is human trafficking and drugs. That's the only thing that, and for exploitation, for power, for money. If you go to watch Aladdin, it's a pretty cool play on Broadway. The genie says to Aladdin, never drink from the cup of money or power, never be satisfied. But this is, Kamala Harris was charged with looking for the root cause of trafficking and the border problem. The root cause, you know how she could find it? Look in the mirror. I mean, if O.J. Simpson was alive, he'd still be looking for the killer of his wife. But, this is the root cause. The root cause is greed and power. And we have a president who loves us, cares for us. So, to me, that gives me great hope for the future of this country. That we have a president, a courageous president who has God's hand on him, who turned his head at 6:11 in the afternoon on July 13th. God's hand is on this man because he's chosen to bring us back to greatness. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Dad.
Mr. President, The other issue for Latinos is our faith. And you are the champion of people of faith. And so we would like to end this, if you would allow us, with praying over you, if you would allow us. And I would like for Apostle Maldonado and for Pastor Ramiro, if you could start, and then Apostle, if you could finish, and we will pray for you.
Can we all get together?
Yes, do you mind, sir?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Let's all get together.
Thank you.
Into the mic. Thank you, sir. Let's all pray together. Heavenly Father, we humble ourselves before you, and we believe, Lord, that you are the answer for all the problems that we're facing. That we can put our hope in you through Jesus,
Yes, Lord.
and have hope again. Our faith can be built up again. That you can return to us the joy that is only from you. However, today, Lord, we lift up the man that we believe you've put your hand upon to help restore America and bring America back to the place that honors you. To a place where we will not be kicked out for saying Christ the King or Jesus is Lord. Lord, we want all faiths to be respected. All faiths. And we thank you that this is a man that does, in fact, respect all people of faith. So we ask, Lord, you would strengthen him, that you'd send your holy and warrior angels around him like we've seen evidenced already. But you'd continue, Lord, because we know that the blood of Jesus draws us near you. So we ask for that covering over him, that he would continue to hear your voice, that you would continue to order his steps, and that he would help us to make America godly again. Amen. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Apostle? Let Apostle get in here.
As I was talking yesterday to in North Carolina, I mentioned to people the fact that this is not a war between the left and the right. This is a war between good and evil. So we can't combat that. We can't fight that in the natural. We need spiritual weapons to fight it. So prayer is one of them. And I believe President Trump is here because there's a purpose, there's a higher assignment for him to finish with this nation. So we're going to pray. Prayer, the Bible says that let's pray for the will of God to come. Meaning, what's the will of God? The Bible says God sets up kings. He removes kings. We're going to pray for the will of God for him to be the next 47th president. Do you believe that? I want you to stretch your hands toward him. In the Old Testament, the prophets anointed the kings to become kings. So today we're going to do what the Bible says. We're going to bring the will of God, and we're going to pray for the president, for President Trump to be the next president. So I want you to stretch your hand, and I want you to pray whatever you want to pray, out loud, but let's pray with all the heart. Father, we thank you. We come to you, and we lift up President Trump. Father, you protected him. You guarded him with a purpose for this time, such a time as this. And we pray today, Father, as an apostle in this country, as a man of God in this country, I pray for the kingdom of God to come, for the will of God to come, and for you to establish your will upon his life. And Father, we anointed him today. We anointed him to be the next 47th president of the United States, to restore the biblical values. Father, and I thank you today. You protected him. No weapon formed against him shall prosper. And he will go to the White House, Father, to represent you and to do your will in your assignment. I pray today that your will be done, and we'll be celebrating that you have put him as the next president. We give you the praise for your protection, and we pray for his family. We pray for every member of his family. You protected him, God, and to you be the glory. And today we can declare freely, Father, freely, Jesus is Lord over his life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Next week you want to have a full week to do impeachment trial, but doesn't that then conflict with the debate on the FISA extension, which has to be done by April 19th?
Well, look, I don't know that it's going to take an entire week to go through the initial round of arguing. I mean, I would love to make it not easy for them to do it. I don't know that it will stretch it into an entire week. What I'm saying is, if we don't start it until the end of the week, that leaves us no adequate opportunity to debate it. And you don't want members trying to get out of town so quickly that they're influenced by the jet fumes.
And let me jump in on this, because there are two ways this can and should proceed constitutionally and consistent with precedent. One is, next week, if we receive the articles of impeachment on Monday night, the Senate, under the rules, immediately moves into a court of impeachment. And typically the beginning of that is negotiating the resolution that lays out how the impeachment will proceed. There are two ways to do it. One, the trial can be on the floor of the Senate. That's what happened with both of the impeachments of Donald Trump, is the impeachment was on the floor of the Senate. The other way they can do it is the Senate can appoint a committee to try the impeachment. So not the entire Senate, not on the Senate floor. That is the way it has typically been done for impeachments below the level of president. So Senator Lee filed an organizing resolution for the full Senate to convene and conduct a trial the way we did twice for President Trump. He and I both believe that would be the best way to do it. But it's not the only way to do it. The other way to do it would be next week, when the articles of impeachment are received, to appoint an impeachment committee that would then conduct the trial in the committee, and that would enable, if there are other legislative matters that need to proceed, they could proceed. They would proceed on parallel tracks. So any Democrat who tells you, no, we've got other things to turn to, we've got FISA, we've got this, we've got that, every one of those arguments is baloney. Because under the existing rules, the Senate could appoint an impeachment committee to conduct a trial that would be public and in front of the American people, and the Senate could simultaneously proceed and consider legislation while that trial was ongoing.
And by the way, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema bucked Chuck Schumer on the filibuster just a couple years ago. So I don't know. There might be Democrats who actually care about the Constitution too. Nah. But if they're allowed to get away with this tabling or dismissal, that would be.
And let's be clear. The question, what difference does it make doing it on a Thursday afternoon? Every one of you covers Capitol Hill. You're aware on Thursday afternoon, senators rush to the airport and fly to get out of here. Schumer wants it on a Thursday afternoon because he wants no coverage. He wants it to go away quickly. The advantage of starting the week with it is it enables the Senate to focus on it. We ought to do our job. And I will say the question a minute ago that was asked, well, you don't have the votes. Understand what you say when you say that we don't have the votes. You're saying that you know that every single Democrat senator does not give a damn about what evidence might be presented, wouldn't listen to the evidence, wouldn't be open to any evidence, doesn't care about the people being killed, doesn't care about the 100,000 Americans who died of drug overdoses last year, doesn't care about the little boys and girls being violently sexually assaulted. They don't come to the border. They don't look them in the eyes. I do. Every one of us here has been to the border. We've seen children. We've seen women who have been brutalized by the cartels. And your question assumes no Democrat cares. They're all okay with the open border. By the way, remember that when you write the stories about each of the Democrats saying, I'm very concerned about border security, because they're going to say that in their election ads. They're going to claim they're very concerned about it. Well, if they are, we ought to have a trial. And the reason Schumer doesn't want a trial, he doesn't want the evidence in front of him, and you know the Democrat senators don't care about the people that are getting hurt by these open borders because their only priority is political power.
I'm going to make one point too, is that public sentiment, public opinion does drive an impeachment trial. 1974, I'm a young boy watching Watergate hearings, And those hearings, with all the American eyes on those, as boring as those hearings were, they drove an impeachment trial to the point that caused Richard Nixon to resign. And just like the press then had a responsibility, the press has a responsibility now, I hope, to talk about the significance of this nuclear option. Yeah.
The Senate is considering the point of order presented by the Majority Leader.
Madam President.
Senator from Texas.
Madam President, I rise to make a motion. The Majority Leader has argued that Secretary Mayorkas's defiance of federal immigration law and active aiding and abetting of the worst criminal invasion in our nation's history does not constitute a high crime or misdemeanor. He has presented no argument on that question. He has presented no briefing on that question, and the position is directly contrary to the Constitution, to the original understanding of the Constitution at the time it was ratified, and to the explicit position of the Biden Department of Justice as argued before the Supreme Court of the United States. The Majority Leader's position is asking members of this Senate to vote on political expediency to avoid listening to arguments. The only rational way to resolve this question is actually to debate it, to consider the Constitution and consider the law.
The Senator will recognize that the Senate is in a non-debatable position. The Senator has a right to offer his point of order, or his motion, but we are in a non-debatable position.
And my motion is to change that so that we can actually debate the law if senators care what the Constitution and law says. I therefore move that the Senate proceed to closed session to allow for deliberation on the question as required by Impeachment Rule 24.
Madam President.
Majority Leader.
In our previous consent request, we gave your side a chance for debate in public, where it should be, and your side objected. We are moving forward.
From Kansas is not wrong. In the 237 years of our nation's history, I don't know that there has been a more shameful day in the United States Senate than today. What we just witnessed was a travesty. It was a travesty to the United States Constitution, and it was a travesty to the American people. And it's important to understand why the Democrats did what they did. We're here on the Senate floor right now, but I want the record to reflect I'm going to do a very accurate count of the number of Democrats who are with us. That would be 0, other than the presiding officer, and somebody has to preside. Not a single Democrat senator chose to come to this floor and listen to one word of evidence. When it comes to the Constitution, the Democrats concluded that Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas defying federal law, ignoring the text of the statute, deliberately releasing criminal illegal aliens over and over and over again, that's just hunky-dory. You can't impeach him for that. Every Democrat just voted. By the way, every cabinet member, guess what? You've just been given a blank slate. Ignore the law. When Democrats are in charge of the Senate, the entire cabinet could ignore the law. It is no longer impeachable. In Democrat wonderland, when a member of the executive branch openly defies the law. By the way, every Democrat just voted that way. They didn't hear one word of argument. The Majority Leader didn't stand up and say, here's the reason why it's okay. No, he didn't present that argument. They didn't read a brief. Nobody wrote a brief. They didn't care enough to know what Senator Lee just laid out, that the Biden Department of Justice went in front of the U.S. Supreme Court and said if the executive defies the law, the answer is impeachment. The willingness of every Democrat to be blatantly hypocritical. Just last year, the Biden Justice Department said, no, you can't sue in court when we, the Biden administration, defy the law. The answer is impeachment. In like 3-card money. Every Senate Democrat said, no, the answer is not impeachment. I don't know what it is. Actually, I do know what it is. There's only one answer left, which is everyone who is unhappy about the open border shows up in November, and to use the phrase, throw the bums out. Because if you're not willing to do your job, is there not one senator on that side of the aisle who cares enough to honor the Constitution? By the way, the second article they threw out said lying to Congress is not a high crime or misdemeanor, it's not impeachable. Now, as the senator from South Carolina pointed out, Bill Clinton was impeached for lying under oath. And you know what happened? And he was ultimately acquitted. But after a full trial where they heard the evidence, where the Senate did its job. By the way, one of the impeachment managers was Senator Graham, who presented that evidence right here on this floor. And you know what? Before Bill Clinton, there's a guy named Walter Nixon. You may not know who Walter Nixon is. Walter Nixon was a federal judge who was convicted of perjury. He was from Mississippi. He was convicted of perjury in front of a grand jury. And he was impeached. And it went to the Senate, and the Senate convicted him and removed him from the bench. So you want to know what the precedents were prior to today? You commit a crime, lying under oath, perjury, it is a high crime or misdemeanor that is impeachable. No more. Because understand the Democrats' rule here. This is not about the Constitution. None of them care. By the way, we repeatedly moved. Let's go into debate. Hear the other side of the argument. Nope. Look, the famous three monkeys, hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. That's just evil, what they did. They don't want to know because they don't care, because it's not about the Constitution. It's not about the law. It is about political expediency. But every bit as violent as what they did to the Constitution was, it's even more offensive what they did to the American people. Last year, 853 migrants died crossing illegally into this country. That's almost 3 a day. You go down to the southern border, you go down to Texas, which the Democrats don't bother to do because they don't care about the people dying. And you see photograph after photograph that Texas farmers and ranchers are finding of dead bodies on their property. Many of my colleagues here have been down there with me, have seen the elderly people the human traffickers have abandoned, have seen the pregnant women the human traffickers have abandoned, have seen the infants and toddlers left to die. The Senate Democrats just told the American people they don't give a damn about the bodies and the people who have died the last 3.5 years, and they don't give a damn about the people that are going to die next week. Next week, more migrants are going to die. When we brought 19 senators down to the border, we went out on a boat in the Rio Grande. We saw a man floating dead in the water. Senator Lee was there. Senator Kennedy was there. He had died that day. The Democrats just told the American people they don't care. When you go down to the border and you look at the children who've been brutalized, just about all of us here are parents. I will tell you, when you look in the eye of a little girl or a little boy who's been abused by traffickers, and you see it, you see the pain, you see the agony of children trapped in sex trafficking, the Democrats just said they don't care. They won't hear the evidence, they don't care that it's deliberate, and they don't care that it'll happen next week, that it'll happen tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be children brutalized because of the Democrats' open border policies, and not a one of them cares. They don't care about the women who are repeatedly sexually assaulted. Again, when you look in the eyes of these women coming over, it's heartbreaking. And the Democrats just said, we don't care. And they don't care about the more than 100,000 Americans that died last year from drug overdoses. The highest in our nation's history. 70% of that is from Chinese fentanyl coming across our southern border. And the Democrats said, we don't want to hear about it. We're not interested in the Americans dying. You know what they also don't care about? They don't care about the criminals that are being released day after day after day. The Biden administration is releasing murderers and rapists and child molesters, and every week we see another story of somebody being killed, somebody being raped, another child being assaulted by illegal immigrants released by Alejandro Mayorkas and Joe Biden. How shocking is it that there wasn't one Democrat who says, you know, massive human suffering matters. We ought to hear the evidence. How shocking is it that there wasn't one Democrat? One! There are 51 of them on that side. Not a single one could screw up the courage to say, let's do our job, let's hear the evidence. How shocking is it that not a Democrat cares about the terrorists who are streaming across our southern border? The nation of Iran has called for jihad against America. Hamas has called for jihad against America. Hezbollah has called for jihad against America. And Joe Biden and the Democrats have put out a red carpet and said, if you want to murder Americans, come across our southern border, and we, the Democrats, will welcome you. Like many of us on this floor, I was in Washington, D.C. on September 11th, 2001. I remember the horror. I lost a good friend, Barbara Olson, who was in the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. I remember the smell of smoke and sulfur and burning. I remember the agony, and I remember the national unity that came after 9/11. As Democrats and Republicans came together, I don't know that I've ever been more proud of a president than when President George W. Bush stood on a pile of rubble with a bullhorn, talking to firefighters and New Yorkers, and one of the men in the crowd called out and said, "We can't hear you," and he responded, "Well, I can hear you, and soon the whole world is going to hear you as well." We were as one. Today, not a single Democrat was able to mount up the courage to tell the majority leader, you know what, I don't want another 9/11 to happen. The House impeached Alejandro Mayorkas for, among other things, releasing terrorist after terrorist after terrorist. We ought to hear the evidence. I believe today we have a greater risk of a major terrorist attack on U.S. soil than at any point since September 11th. And every Democrat just told the American people it doesn't matter to them to hear the evidence. I appreciate my Republican colleagues who are here, who are willing to hear the evidence, willing to engage, willing to stand up and defend the American people. But you know what? The Democrats who aren't here, they aren't here because you know who's also not here? If you look up at the gallery, the reporters are all gone. A couple of folks in the back, I hope you all right. But the reporters are absent. That's the Democrats' plan. What is fascinating, we're presenting arguments. Many of us, particularly those of us in judiciary, but many of us have presented those arguments over and over and over again in hearings. Not a Democrat argues on the other side. It's an issue unlike any other issue I know of in politics. Listen, if we're arguing about taxes, as Republicans, we say we should cut taxes. It's good for the American people. And you know what Democrats do? They stand up. We know their talking points. No, tax the rich. Okay, fine. We have a debate. We're talking about just about every issue. The Democrats will argue on the other side. They have their spin. What is fascinating? Where's Dick Durbin, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, standing up saying, no, it's not right that migrants are dying every day. No, it's not right that children are being assaulted every day. No, it's not right that women are being sexually assaulted every day. No, it's not right that they're releasing terrorists every day. They're not there. Not a Democrat is there. Why? Because you cannot defend it. I'll tell you, South Texas for 100+ years has been a Democrat region of our state. It is turning red with the speed of a freight locomotive because nobody can see the suffering that is unfolding and defend it. And the Democrats, by their silence and by the complicity of the press corps, they are counting on the press corps to write story. Victory for the Democrats, yay! They got rid of the impeachment trial. That's the headline they want. Understand they don't have a substantive defense. None of them disputes a word we are saying. Not a single Democrat has stood up and said, you know, it's wrong that Laken Riley would still be alive if Joe Biden hadn't let her murderer go. They know it's right. The reason they didn't want a trial is they don't want the American people to hear about it. And it's our obligation to make sure the American people do. And understand.
That's why he's not going to resign.
Mayorkas is not impeached for being incompetent. He's not impeached for being negligent. This invasion is not an accident. It's not that they're bad at the job. Sadly, it's that Alejandro Mayorkas is very good at the job he's trying to do, and the job he is trying to do is maximize the number of illegal immigrants in America. This is absolutely deliberate, and this is flouting the law. Look, I've said several times, Joe Biden has done something I thought was impossible. He made me miss Barack Obama. Listen, Barack Obama, there are lots of things I disagreed with. There are lots of things I disagreed with about Barack Obama. But when it came to immigration, Obama, by and large, followed the law. And in particular, Obama deported millions of people. Remember, the left got mad at Obama. They called him the deporter-in-chief. We have never seen a president of the United States do what Joe Biden is doing, which is utterly flouting the law. Not only is Mayorkas not trying to secure the border, he's trying to accelerate illegal immigration. He wants the 10.4 million illegal immigrants to become 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, because he views them all as future Democrat votes. And so this is different from saying he's not very good at his job. This is openly defying the law, and this is aiding and abetting Mexican criminal cartels, human and drug traffickers that have become decabillionaires because of these open border policies.
So
America. We are facing the worst illegal immigration our nation has ever seen. 11 million illegal immigrants have come in, invited by the Democrats. When Joe Biden came into office, he inherited the lowest rate of illegal immigration in 45 years. All he had to do was nothing. Just sit there and stare at the wall. But instead, he deliberately broke the system. This chart on the right shows when Biden came into office, you had historic lows. The instant he was sworn in, the numbers skyrocketed. It went from the lowest rate in 45 years to today, the highest rate in the history of our nation. This is deliberate. Now today, President Biden and the Democrats have a press conference. And here's what they're announcing. He could have stopped this every single day of his presidency. When he signs this executive order, the only question anyone should ask is, why didn't you do this in 2021? Why didn't you do this in 2022? Why didn't you do this in 2023? Why didn't you do this last month or the month before or the month before? How many dead bodies is enough? You want to understand the consequences? Take a look at the two police officers in New York who were shot this week by an illegal alien that Joe Biden and the Democrats released. The assailant, Bernardo Raul Castro Mata, is a name really out of Charles Dickens. Mata is Spanish for he kills. His middle name is a communist murdering dictator. And what happened? He came illegally from Venezuela. He came to John and my home state of Texas. He came to Eagle Pass. We had him apprehended. And what did he do? He did what Joe Biden and the Democrats have done for 3.5 years. He let him go. He let him go. And Mr. Mata went to New York City and shot 2 New York cops this week. That's happening every single week. We have not had a week go by when someone is not shot, someone is not murdered, a child is not raped by an illegal immigrant released by Joe Biden and the Democrats. Now, understand what is going on here. This is election year politics. And by the way, we've seen this game before. Apparently the Democrats have one playbook, which is create a crisis, and then a couple of months before the election, do something very mild to address the crisis and say, see, problem solved. We saw this with gas prices. Right before the last election, gas prices had doubled. People were hurting. And what did he do? Right before the election, he releases oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Gas prices fell a little bit. And they victory lap that they've reduced gas prices a tiny bit from the massive historic highs they've had. We also saw this on student loans. Last election, right before the election, What does Joe Biden do? He says, I'm giving away $1 trillion to young people. By the way, young people, come vote for Democrats now. Now, he knew he was lying to them. He knew what he was doing was illegal. He knew the Supreme Court would strike it down, and of course it did. This is the same game. What they are announcing is they're going to issue an executive order that normalizes illegal immigration at 4,000 people a day. 4,000 people a day is 1.5 million a year. And understand on this chart, I'm actually going to pull this chart over here because what they're doing is unusually cynical. He came in here. The numbers skyrocketed here. 4,000 a day is 120,000. So we're right here. He's proposing to lower it to right here. To lower it just a bit. And then to play the same game he played on gas prices. Say, look at the great victory. And by the way, if God forbid Joe Biden is reelected, the number will go from 120 back up to here. Because this is what they want. The Democrats want that criminal invasion. And the police officers being shot, the young women being murdered, the children being raped, they're unwilling to stand up and protect them. It's immoral, it's wrong, and what the White House is doing today is they're just playing a political game.
Well, let's do the math. Open border, closed border. You come into office, President Biden comes into office, 70.
Go ahead.
Do you think it's time for Speaker Johnson to try to negotiate some type of deal with the White House?
No. The White House won't agree to anything. So understand, Marcia just made a very important point on H.R. 2. The House passed strong legislation that would have secured the border, H.R. 2. It was designed to secure the border. In the Senate, I introduced H.R. 2 in the Senate. Twice I forced a vote on the Senate floor on H.R. 2. Twice. Every single Democrat voted no. Now, the press very meekly reported what Chuck Schumer said, which is H.R. 2 is dead in the Senate. Why? Because it's designed to work. H.R. 2 is designed to lower the numbers back to where they were when Biden came into office. It's designed to secure the border. So Schumer was right. H.R. 2 was dead in the Senate. Why? Because the Democrats want this border invasion. That is the outcome they want. So you can't negotiate. Now, I will say this. I'm going to make a prediction. In the next 5 months, we're going to see a very modest decrease in illegal immigration. Why? Because Joe Biden controls it. He caused this. The Democrats want this invasion. So the next 5 months, you're going to see the numbers go down slightly. So then they can say, see, we solved the problem. It's a lie. They know it's a lie. And if, God forbid, they win in November, the numbers will skyrocket again and more people will die. Go ahead, last question.
A lot of you have talked about this being the number one issue for voters. You're running for re-election. There's a lot of polling, maybe not in Texas, but in other states, where Democratic incumbents are polling better than Joe Biden, that maybe they're not facing the blowback that you think they should. I'm wondering, you've gone to a lot of states, a lot of other senators are trying to elect a Republican Senate. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on how, on the messaging for Republicans to get across in states that aren't on the border, states like Michigan or states like Ohio.
Well, I can tell you in Texas, the invasion at our southern border is the number one issue in the state of Texas, and I believe it is compelling across the country. Now, you're right. Democrat senators, when they go home, there are a lot of senators that go home that pretend they're not crazy, that pretend they're actually moderate, middle of the road. It's an absolute lie. On this issue, every single Democrat, all of them, have voted for this over and over and over again. H.R. 2, they had the opportunity. Do you want to secure the border? Every Democrat voted no. John Tester, he goes back to Montana, says, it's terrible what's happening at the border. And then he votes against securing the border. Bob Casey goes back to Pennsylvania, says, oh, we got to do something about illegal immigration. And then he votes against securing the border. Every single Democrat, every one of them. I forced a vote a couple of years ago on Kate's Law. All right, you want to talk about common sense legislation? Kate's Law polls at about 90%. Why is that? Because it's named after Kate Steinle, beautiful young woman in California, murdered on a California pier by an illegal immigrant who had been released over and over and over again through the revolving door of Democrats letting violent criminals go. Kate's law says that anyone who enters the country repeatedly illegally with an aggravated felony will face a mandatory minimum prison sentence. In any room in America, in the bluest state in America, if you ask people, they say, yeah, Kate's law makes perfect sense. I forced a vote on the Senate floor. Every single Democrat voted no on Kate's law. So the challenge is, frankly, our friends in the media who are here, repeat the adjective when you discuss John Tester, you call him the moderate Democrat. He's not a moderate Democrat. Every single time he's voted in favor of this invasion. And there is a disconnect because every Democrat goes home and pretends they don't want this problem to happen, but they all want it. And the reason is they look at that invasion and they see future Democrat voters. This is all about power. This is the most cynical decision I've ever seen. Listen, every one of us here has been down to the border multiple times. I'll tell you, when you look in the eyes of a little girl or a little boy who's been brutalized, who's been abused by human traffickers, when you see women who've been repeatedly raped, it's evil. And every Democrat votes in favor of it.
You criticize this move as a political play. How would you respond to the administration's assertion that the rejection of the Senate border deal in February was a political play by Republicans?
It's totally false. The Democrats' border legislation was terrible. The Democrats' border legislation that Chuck Schumer put forward was actually designed, it was the same thing as this executive order. It was political camouflage. Understand what this Democrat legislation did. It would have codified, it would have put into federal law Joe Biden's catch and release, the practice when they apprehend an illegal immigrant, they let him go. By the way, it means Mr. Mata, who just shot 2 police officers, under the Democrat legislation, he would have been released. He would have been in New York. He would have shot those 2 cops. It puts into law that illegal immigrants, when they're released, automatically get a work permit. So it ends up benefiting illegal immigrants and attracting even more. It puts into law that many illegal immigrants get a taxpayer-funded attorney. Not only that, that legislation also put into law billions of dollars for the NGOs that are actively facilitating the criminal invasion of this country, working with the cartels. And on top of that, it normalized 5,000 illegal immigrants a day. That is 1.8 million a year. And Chuck Schumer's fake immigration bill would have had 1.8 million illegal immigrants every year in perpetuity forever. Schumer at the outset said he was not willing to secure the border. He was not willing to agree to anything that actually secured the border. And the entire purpose of that bill was so Democrats could do. Look, Joe Biden is going to claim, gosh, we had the Schumer bill, but mean President Trump didn't like it. And so that's why the criminal invasion happened. Except if you look at the chart, the criminal invasion didn't happen 2 months ago. It happened in January 2021. What happened in January 2021? Joe Biden put his hand on the Bible and lied to the American people when he said he would faithfully execute the laws of this country. He hasn't done that. This is all about politics. Yeah.
Senator, in all fairness, I mean, it's also Senator Langford's border bill. I mean, was it a mistake politically for Senator Langford to sit down with Democrats and try and hash something out?
Was president, we deported millions of people. Remember, the left got mad at him. They called him the deporter-in-chief. What Joe Biden is doing has never been done before. He's simply defying the law. Alejandro Mayorkas is utterly lawless. And he is direct. I'm not disagreeing. He is directly responsible. It is. Now, she is Well, for 4 years, she's been the border czar. By the way, how have y'all enjoyed spending time with the border czar? I can't remember. How many times has she been down here? That would be none. The border czar, she doesn't come here. And I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, I was down here. As you know, I spent a lot of time in South Texas. I spent a lot of time in the Valley. I try regularly to go out on midnight patrol. With many of you, I've been out on midnight patrol. I will tell you a story. One time, several years ago, Paul, you remember this. There was a stash house, a little bit in from the river. Border Patrol agents came, kicked down the door, and they're pulling out traffickers. I mean, big, scary dudes. These guys are tatted up, rough guys. And the agents are all calling over to me. They're going, "Senator, Senator." I'm going, "Ixnay on the editor's side. Just call me Bob." But these guys do that every day. That's exactly right. But when I was down here one of the last times, a reporter asked me, said, "Well, aren't the policies of the Democrats more compassionate when it comes to immigration?" And you know what I did? I just started laughing. I said, "You know who doesn't believe that anymore? Democrats." And I just asked the reporter, I said, "Where's Joe Biden? Where's Kamala Harris? Where's a single Democrat senator? Where's a single Democrat House member?" They don't come because you can't see what's happening here and defend it. You can't look at the dead bodies. The missing children, the children who've been brutalized, the women who've been sexually assaulted. Look, I've been down here over and over again with farmers and ranchers that just show me body after body they find on their property. You may have seen the last time Mayorkas testified at the Senate Judiciary Committee. I took the opportunity to very gently question. I asked him, I said, "How many migrants died last year crossing into this country?" He said, "I don't know, I have no idea." I said, "Of course you don't. The number is 853, that's from your own agency, but you don't give a damn enough to know the people that are dying because of your policy." I asked him, "How many children have been brutalized by human traffickers?" "I don't know." "How many women have been sexually assaulted?" "I don't know." "How many Americans have died of drug overdoses in the last year?" "I don't know." That number is over 100,000. The highest in history. To put that in perspective, last year we lost nearly twice as many Americans as were killed in the entire Vietnam War. In all of Vietnam, we lost just over 60,000 Americans. We lost 100,000 last year. Now look, y'all know, any good lawyer, if you're asking questions, you never ask a question you don't know the answer to. There was one exchange with Mayorkas that left me utterly flabbergasted. I put up a poster board with pictures of colored wristbands on it. And I asked him, I said, "Please tell the committee what these wristbands are." And Mayorkas looked at me and said, "I have no idea. I've never seen them before." I was truly stunned. And I looked at him and I said, "Mr. Secretary, you just told the American people you're utterly incompetent at your job and you don't give a damn enough even to pretend to try." Because what y'all know is just about every illegal immigrant that crosses this country is wearing one of those wristbands. And the colors correspond to how many thousands of dollars they owe the cartels. And if you stand on the banks of the river, you can often see hundreds or even thousands of those wristbands in the grass. And what Mayorkas was saying is that he hasn't stood on the banks of the river, that he hasn't talked to the men and women who theoretically work for him, but he's got a political agenda rather than having the backs of the Border Patrol. And those teenage boys that come in, They turn themselves in, they say where they want to go, and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris put them on a plane and put them on a bus and fly them to every city in America. I tell people all the time, I visit cities all over Texas, all over the country, and I say, you may think you're not in a border town. You're wrong. Because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are flying illegal immigrants to your town. And the teenage boys that show up, they owe thousands of dollars to the cartels. And they have to pay that back. If they don't pay the money back, the cartels will kill their families. So they show up in every city in America and they're committing crimes. They're robbing houses, they're carjacking people, they're mugging people, they're selling drugs, they're doing whatever they can to pay the money back so their mother or their abuela doesn't get killed back home. And as you all know, as bad as the teenage boys have it, the teenage girls have it worse. There are thousands upon thousands of teenage girls right now trapped in sex slavery to pay off the debts they owe the cartels. And look, I think about a 15-year-old girl in Honduras looking north, imagining a better life, imagining freedom. And she ends up being handed over to traffickers who violently abuse and violate her every day of her travel north. And then she finds herself in forced sex slavery for years in a living hell. When I look at those colored wristbands, those are modern day leg irons. This is modern day slavery. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Colin Allred are all directly responsible. You know, we'll hear Democrats periodically say, oh, I care. I care. I care about the people being hurt. And my answer is no, you don't. Because if you cared, you'd stop it. You could stop it today. You could stop it tomorrow. You could let these men and women do their damn jobs, and we could stop it right now. And the reason Biden and Harris and Allred, the reason they don't is because they look at 11.5 million illegal immigrants and they see future Democrat votes. And so if people have to die, if children have to be brutalized, if women have to be sexually assaulted, all of that is a price they're willing to pay for political power. It is utterly cynical and it is wrong. And look, I'll say this, most of us here are parents. When you've looked in the eyes of a little girl or little boy who you know has been abused over and over and over again, and every one of you has looked in those eyes, it haunts you. When you lay down at night to go to sleep, you still see the eyes of that child. And it's happening over and over again. This is wrong. Now here's the good news, we can fix it. Everything that went wrong with the border happened because of unilateral executive decisions by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That means on January 20th of next year, when Donald Trump is back as president. We will fix this problem. We will secure the border. And mark my words, we've got TV cameras here. In January, it's not going to take a year. It's not going to take 6 months. Within 60 days, we will secure this border. These men and women know how to do their jobs. They are stopped by political hacks. And let's be clear. On any measure, Kamala's worse than Joe Biden. Look, Joe Biden doesn't know what time of day it is. He can't tie his shoes. And I'm not sure you'd let him handle the TV remote control. Joe Biden has been a puppet. By the way, every Democrat knew that. Kamala is a true believer. She believes every word of this. You guys know. But look, Kamala Harris sat at a committee hearing and compared ICE to the Ku Klux Klan. That's disgusting. Come vienda. As Reagan said about the left, it's not what they don't know, it's that so much of what they know just isn't so.
Yes, exactly.
Look, Kamala Harris, when the press went crazy with the photograph insisting that the Border Patrol was whipping migrants, that was a lie. Those were reins. Now, I understand to a city girl, she may be confused what reins are. See, horses don't come with a steering wheel. But you actually have leather to pull and direct them which way to go. That story was a lie, and yet Kamala eagerly leaned in and demonized the Border Patrol agents who were doing their jobs. And she still hasn't apologized. You know what? It says something, and she knows it's a lie now. She knew it then. She didn't care.
Bingo.
It was convenient. I'm going to say two things to wrap up. Number one thing to understand about the border. There are political issues on which we have reasonable disagreements. So, if I'm in the Senate and we're talking about tax policy, and look, I served with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. I served with a bunch of whack jobs.
Amazing you're still safe.
So on taxes, they all want to increase taxes. I want to cut taxes, they want to raise taxes. But you know what? In the Senate, we can have a political debate about that. We can go back and forth. They can say it's always the rich need to pay more taxes, yet somehow they always end up sticking it to the middle class when they say they want to do that. But we can actually have that debate, and that's a normal political debate. High taxes, low taxes. Understand at the border, the Democrats don't have another side to this argument. When I lay these facts out in the Judiciary Committee hearings over and over and over again, dozens of times, hundreds of times, it's not like there's a Democrat senator who steps forward and goes, no, Ted's wrong. Ted's wrong. Let me explain what's really happening. They never say that. Here's their strategy. They're just silent. And they're silent because, sadly, they know the corrupt corporate media will be complicit in their silence. Now, if you watch Fox News, you can see what's happening. But if you watch CNN or MSNBC, there is no border crisis. Doesn't exist. Look, Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, truly a professional liar. She stood up and said, people aren't just walking across the border, it's just not happening. Now there's a technical legal term for that. That's called a lie. And by the way, I responded, I said, I'll tell you what, Karine, come on down with me any day. Pick a day, let's go out, and within an hour, we will encounter someone doing what you said is not happening.
More than one.
And bring the reporters. Look, our objective here is real simple, tell the truth. And in contrast, I want to talk for a minute about my opponent, Colin Allred. I'm not sure we've ever had a candidate who loves open borders more than Colin Allred. So he's right now running TV ads. He's running ads in the valley, saying he's tough on cartels. Look, I'll give him this. He's got a sense of humor. And by the way, there are 254 counties in Texas. He found 2 police officers willing to go on TV and stand next to him. I'm impressed. 254 counties. Somewhere, they were willing to stand up next to him. Colin Allred, his first 4 years in the Senate, voted 100% with Nancy Pelosi. Every single vote. Did not deviate on a single vote. On the border, every single time there has been a vote to secure the border, Colin Allred has voted no. 100% of the time. He's voted against legislation to secure the border. He's voted against legislation to build the wall. You want to see how ridiculous it is? There's a bill called the Police Act. Very simple, common sense bill. It says, if an illegal alien violently assaults a police officer, that illegal alien should be deported. Now, by the way, I promise you, go to any city in Texas, gather 50 or 100 Texans in a room and ask them, hey, if an illegal alien beats up a cop, should we deport him? Like any rational person would say, of course we should. Colin Allred voted no. And by the way, do any of y'all here think border security is important? Well, if you do, Colin Allred says you're a racist. Here's what Colin Allred says about the border wall. He calls it that racist border wall. And Colin Allred pledges that he will personally tear down that racist border wall. But you know what? He's counting on deception. He's spending, and okay, he cast one vote. It was a resolution saying we have a crisis on the border. And he had this moment of courage where he said, yes, we have a crisis. So he voted yes. That's why he votes against anything and everything that would solve that crisis. This is a fundamental choice. It's a choice about who we are. I'm proud to stand with the men and women of the Border Patrol because you're protecting Texas, you're protecting America, you're protecting my family and my children. It is inspiring to be here in the presence of heroes. And I will tell you this, you're protecting America, and I will always, always have your back. And by the way, I got to give you one other bit of warning. South Texas is turning red. As everyone knows, South Texas, the Valley, has been Democrat for 100 years. But let me tell you, the Hispanic community, the Latino community, our community is a conservative community. What are the values in our community? Faith, family, patriotism, hard work, the American dream. Those are all conservative values. And by the way, look, if you look back, many of you know my dad, Rafael Cruz. He's a pastor. He's down here a lot. My father has talked about, he said, listen, 50 years ago, Texas as a whole was a one-party state. We were all Democrats 50 years ago. And 50 years ago, it wasn't that there was no political disagreement in Texas. There were effectively two parties, conservative Democrats and liberal Democrats. And they had a battle, and that determined who governed Texas. And in those battles 50 years ago, Hispanics were always conservative Democrats. That's who we were. There aren't any conservative Democrats left. The Democrat Party today has gone bat crap crazy. tell you, look, I talk with Democrats in South Texas all the time, elected Democrats, current elected Democrats, who look at me and say, listen, if my party's for open borders, I can't support that.